Welcome everyone to this very special Soytheist live stream. In this live stream, we are going to go through 75 anti-vegan arguments and we're going to debunk them and we're going to rank them. So if you're ready for this, leave a comment in the chat saying that you're ready. That's just it. Just literally say you're ready and we can begin. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? How are all of you? So let me quickly bring up the tier list. So here's a list of all the arguments, right? Let me just show you. So here are all the arguments that I've put into the form of some images, and as I go along, I'll tell you what they are so that you can keep up if you can't figure out from the icons themselves. But yeah, we'll do that. And let me explain what this is, right? Let me quickly explain what this is. So these are the worst arguments. The F tier arguments are going to be the worst arguments against veganism. The E tier ones are going to be better than that, and so on until the very top. The S here is for the special tier arguments. So these are the best of the best arguments against veganism. Or rather, I would say the most difficult arguments to debunk as a vegan. So that's how we're going to do this, all right? Anyway, with all of that cleared up, I guess we can begin. Right, so the first argument that we're going to be talking about is going to be the veganism is anti-indigenous argument, right? So let's see, where would we put this? I suppose we could put this in... Okay, let's first debunk this argument, right? So this is an argument that has become more fashionable in recent years, right? It has become more fashionable in recent years. And the argument basically is that by going vegan, I don't even know, it takes different forms from different people. So some people say that because there are no indigenous groups that are completely vegan, that is to say there are no indigenous groups, even like the argument basically goes that because there are no indigenous groups that are completely vegan, which is to say that there are no indigenous groups that are completely free of animal abuse, right? Therefore, going vegan is going against those indigenous groups. I suppose that is the argument. But the problem with this kind of argument is that there are no indigenous groups that are rape-free or murder-free. But that doesn't mean that these things are morally justifiable. Now, the point that makes this a little better, I suppose, or a little more difficult to explain than other arguments against veganism is because it plays the race card, sort of, right? So it becomes more difficult to explain if you're a certain ethnicity. So yeah, it's like if you're a certain ethnicity and you're trying to debunk this argument, you're portrayed as racist. So that's the thing, right? That's the thing that happens, and therefore this, I think, goes a little higher up in the list on the tier of anti-vegan arguments. So where should we put this? What do you think, folks? I think this one goes into the B tier. Is that right? In the beginning, it's going to be a little difficult because it's all going to be incredibly relative, right? So yeah, we might change these around as we go along. By the way, if you have any questions or you have any anything that you would want answered, any questions you want answered, or any requests that you have, then you can use the link in the pinned comment or the super chat feature to submit your questions or your requests. I'll answer all of them and I'll respond to all of them, right? Anyway, let's continue. Let me put my headphones on and let me know, what do you think of this video idea? Do you think this is going to be a good video? Do you think this is going to be enjoyable? Let me know. Are you enjoying it so far? Although we've just begun. But anyway, hang on a minute. Didn't want to burp into the microphone. Okay, the next argument is that veganism is ableist, right? Or it goes against disabled people, because if you have certain food allergies, you can't be vegan, right? You can't be vegan in the sense that you eat all plant-based food, right? That becomes a difficulty for disabled people, right? So this is based on a misunderstanding, a popular misunderstanding of what veganism is, right? Because veganism is a boycott of all the animal products as far as is possible and practicable. And we'll come back to that point later on as well. But it's a boycott of animal products as far as is possible and practicable. So if someone, for example, has a certain food allergy, which makes it difficult for them or impossible for them, let's say, to be vegan, then it means that if they avoid animal products as far as is possible and practicable for them, right, then they too are vegan. And the problem with this argument, again, as like the last one, the anti-indigenous one, is that it's almost always people not belonging to these groups that use it, right? And they use it, like, even when someone is not indigenous, even when someone is not disabled, they say that veganism is anti-indigenous, veganism is ableist. So they use the suffering of other people, of the genuine suffering of other people, for their own greed, right? I think, and I think that in itself is a problem, right? So yeah, that has to be something that should be pointed out whenever this argument is brought up. Sort of these sort of identity politics, toxic identity politics arguments, whenever they're brought up, they should be shut right down by pointing out the fact that they should not be using the suffering of other people's for their own greed. I think that's incredibly important. So where does this one go? What do you think? So the ableist argument, I think it's not as good as the C tier, like the anti-indigenous argument, but it's also not that bad. Like it's not as easy to debunk, right? You have to know certain things. You have to know the definition of veganism, for example. This can be responded by basically everyone without much difficulty about having to worry about your race and that kind of stuff. So I think this would be like a C tier argument, right? Right. So let's move on. Let's move on to the next one. So the next argument against veganism is that veganism is classist. This, we have the icon for this is this. So the reason people say this, right, the reason people say that veganism is classist is because they think that they talk about vegan food being too expensive and that kind of stuff. It's only it's like too expensive, right? It's too expensive, and it's a sort of way to demonize poor people for eating animal products because they can't eat these expensive vegan foods that people talk about. But okay, a few things. First of all, no one is, like, at least most mainstream vegans are not demonizing poor people for eating animals. Then it's like people are only talking in their own circles, and sometimes when they're talking in their own circles, that kind of reaches other people, but it's meant to be for their own circles, right? So when I'm talking about veganism, I'm talking about in my own circle, right, in my own social circle, and it may sometimes reach other people. That's not my fault. I'm not demonizing someone who can't afford it if they genuinely can't afford it because of the price of vegetables are too high, maybe where they live in certain parts of the world. But yeah, that's not true that people demonize poor people for their eating meat. It's mostly people talking in their own circles. So again, that is just an argument that is just simply not true. So it's a blatant lie. So I'd say that this one goes into the E tier, right? There are worse arguments against veganism, but this is definitely one of the poorer ones. Okay, so we're done with 3. This is going to end with 10 minutes in. This is going to be a long live stream, everyone. So grab a seat, grab some food maybe, get a few drinks, like I have one here, and pack right in. Okay, so the next argument against veganism is this: no ethical consumption under capitalism. And you see, I've used some an icon of corporations and dollar bills and that kind of stuff, right? So that's what I've done here. Also, before we move on to that other next argument, I would like to say that I will address the veganism is too expensive argument in a separate argument. So that's why I'm not talking about the cost of foods, vegan foods right now, because that comes later, right? Because veganism demonizing poor people and veganism is being too expensive, these are like two separate arguments used by non-vegans. So I'll refer to them later. Anyway, the next argument against veganism is that no ethical consumption under capitalism. So I have a full video on this. And I provide 4 separate responses to this argument, right? I provide 4 separate ones. But here I'll just talk about my main criticism of this argument. So the point here, I think, that they try to make is that they say that under capitalism, there is no ethical consumption. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. That is their point. I don't have enough I haven't studied this subject enough to have an opinion on it, but that's the claim. But I'll accept it. I'll accept the premise, for example, for the sake of the argument that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. So whatever you do is unethical. But to point that out is not to justify anything that you can do. It is to say that don't worry too much. It's not your fault that you're contributing to unethical things, right? Because it's capitalism. So don't worry too much about personal responsibility. It's about we need a systemic change. That's the point of the no ethical consumption under capitalism point. But the point of that, again, is to address the fact that there needs to be like a systemic change. But lots of things need systemic change in order to solve them, right? Lots and lots of things. For example, racism, at least, like if you don't accept the premise that racism needs a systemic change now, at least 200 years ago it did. Or maybe even just 100 years ago, right? Just 100 years ago. But 100 years ago, imagine someone going up to like a racial minority and punching that racial minority, and the justification is, well, there needs to be a systemic change. Me not punching this racial minority member, that does nothing. So what's the point? So yeah, that's not going to do it. That's not an valid excuse. A requirement for a systemic change does not mean you can do unethical things under that system, right? It means that you have to do your best to get a systemic change around, and until then you have to act as ethically as possible. So where do you think this one goes? Does this one go above the anti-indigenous one, or does it go along with it? No ethical consumption under capitalism. Well, you do need to know a few things in order to debunk this argument. So I would say that, yeah, this goes alongside the anti-indigenous argument. Okay, we are 4 arguments in and we're 15 minutes in. Okay, let's go. So the next argument is that veganism is caste-ist, right? I'll go through this one quickly because I think I'll do a separate video on it. But the caste-ist argument is that there's a caste system in India, and it's a sort of a system of hierarchy of powers. the higher up you are in that caste system, the higher power you have. And the sort of the top caste, right, like sort of the upper castes, they sort of worship cows, and so the lower caste people today sort of eat cows as a sort of resistance against the upper caste people. Oh, why am I out of focus? So they eat. So there is a perception that lower caste people should eat cows as a sort of resistance against the upper caste people, to sort of oppose the caste system. But that makes no sense. It is almost as if you're creating your own caste system where you put the animals below you, and that's what you're doing, right? When you sort of you're putting you've created your own caste system where you put the animals below you, and you're using them just as the upper caste people use the lower caste people, and that is no way to oppose the caste system, right? That makes absolutely no sense. So yeah, this one's bad, but you do need to know a lot of things. To know the history of the caste system, to know a lot of things more than the other stuff. So I'm going to put this in as an A tier argument. Okay, so let's carry on. By the way, this icon, I've chosen this icon because this is a Brahmin, right? This is an icon for a Brahmin, and like the Brahmins are the sort of top caste in the caste system, so that's the reason I've chosen this icon for representing the caste system argument. How many arguments are we in? Okay, we're just done with 5 arguments, so that's kind of a milestone, a small milestone. We have 75 arguments to go through. Oh my god, sit tight, because we're gonna be here for a long time. For sure. So the next argument is that veganism will cause worker exploitation. This is just a ridiculous argument. This is just a ridiculous argument because the argument goes something like this. It is that who grows the plants that you vegans eat? Silly vegans! You're causing worker exploitation. You care about animals, who will care about the humans? But the thing is that non-vegans eat those very plants themselves, right? The non-vegans eat those very plants themselves, and also, right, they eat the animals who eat the plants grown by similar workers, right? So, and an animal eats far more crops than would be eaten by a human if the crops were grown directly to feed that human, right? So this is just a stupid argument. This is an F tier argument for sure. Let's go. So the next argument is the 7th argument. Argument number 7 is that, like, it's difficult in social settings. It's difficult in social settings to be vegan when you have non-vegan company, when you have non-vegan friends, when you have non-vegan family members. This one's an honest argument, I'd say, right? At least kind of honest, more honest than the ones we've covered so far. And so, but the thing is, well, if you lived 200 years ago, or if you lived, again, 100 years ago, you'd have a lot of racist friends and family, right? But which side of history do you want to be here on? Do you want to be analogous to the kind of person who said, well, my family is racist, my friends are racist, so I'd rather be racist too? Or do you want to be analogous to the kind of person who stood up, went against the grain of society and said, well, no, just because all my friends and company are racist doesn't mean that I'm going to be racist too, right? That's not what I'm going to do. Do you want to be on that side of history? Because I certainly would like to be on that side of history. So, yeah. That's the side I would want to be on, and that's the opportunity you have right now. Do you, when, as Peter Singer asks, when history looks back, do you want to be counted amongst the oppressors, or do you want to be counted amongst the liberators? You have that opportunity right now, right? So this, I would say, is a C or D tier, or maybe an E tier. It's a D tier argument because it's an honest argument. Okay, we're coming up on some popular anti-vegan arguments. So this one is the Canines Tho, the Canines Tho argument. We have canine teeth, these ones that are meant to tear through flesh. But first of all, the two things to say to this. The first point to make here is that these teeth are tiny. These are tiny, right? And you should see the teeth of some, the canine teeth of some herbivorous animals, and see how much larger they are than our canines. For example, I want to show you the picture of a saber-toothed deer, right? A saber-toothed deer. Let me quickly show you that. Share screen. So look here at this saber-toothed deer. Look how large the canines of this deer are. And this deer's teeth are clearly not meant for eating eating animals, right? Cutting through flesh or that kind of stuff. So there's that. Our teeth are clearly smaller than that, and so they're obviously also not meant for eating through flesh. But the other point is that even if we could tear through flesh as easily as a tiger could, for example, that is a might makes right argument. That's a might makes right argument. So basically, it's saying that just because we can, it means that we should. We certainly can eat meat, right? We certainly can eat meat, but that doesn't mean that we should, right? What we can do doesn't make. If we can do something, doesn't mean it is automatically justifiable to do something. People can kill other people. People can rape other people, but that doesn't mean that those things are right. That those things are morally correct. Correct? So yeah, it's just a very poor argument against veganism. It's a silly argument. It goes in the F tier. And I feel like we're going to be coming up on more of these F tier arguments. Right? I'm having a lot of, let's say, caffeinated drinks. I hope I don't. I hope that nothing goes wrong. Let's continue. So the next argument against veganism is our ancestors ate meat. Our ancestors. So for that, we've chosen this icon here, right here, and the point that our ancestors ate meat means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Why should we base our current society, right? What is it? Why should we base our current society and the morals of our current society on the basis of what primitive tribes did? That makes no sense whatsoever, right? So yeah, that's just an F-tier argument. The next one is that we evolved to our current state by, in part, eating meat. I mean, like, okay, so what? Like, we've gotten to this point by eating meat for sure, but that doesn't mean that we should continue to do that, right? Evolution is descriptive. it's a description, as Richard Dawkins, the famous evolutionary biologist, said. It is not prescriptive. Darwinism tells how the world got here, but it doesn't tell us how to arrange the world. In fact, social Darwinism is widely regarded in ethics and sociology as an evil, right? The idea that only the fittest, the survival of the fittest, is Darwinism in its descriptive form. The idea that survival of the fittest should be how we should arrange society right now is recognized as a logical error, right? And that is not how we should arrange society. So this one's a terrible argument, but it's not an F tier argument because you do have to know certain things, but you don't have to know that many things. So it's an E tier argument. Next one. Vegans are weak. Vegans are weak. But this is just clearly not true. If you just look at vegan athletes around the world, the vegan strongmen around the world, vegan bodybuilders, this is just clearly not true, right? So this is an F tier argument, for sure. The next one is you can but animals eat other animals, right? That's the one. Sometimes, and this is also phrased as, but you couldn't make a lion go vegan, or make a lion go vegan first and then you come to me, right? That's how it is sometimes phrased. But the thing is that lions and other animals, they do it out of necessity, right? They have to eat meat. They can't survive without meat, but we can. Now, there's another form of this argument where someone could say, well, what about bears? What about bears? Well, they don't need to eat animals, but they still do. So yeah, what about them? The point to make there is that bears don't have moral agency. They don't have moral agency. So what does that mean? It means that bears don't have the ability to make moral decisions, but we do. For example, if a baby punched me, right? If a baby punched Soytheist, we couldn't hold that baby morally responsible, right? Because the baby knows nothing. But if I punch the baby back, right now, that would be messed up, wouldn't it? That would be completely messed up. So yeah. Similarly, it goes with other animals. They're not able to make moral decisions, right? But we can. Therefore, it means that we shouldn't make moral decisions that lead to unnecessary exploitation, or just exploitation in general. We shouldn't do it, right? So there's that. We're closing in on the half-hour point. Wow. And we've gone through how many arguments? We have not that many arguments. Anyway, so this argument, I think it goes in the D tier based on which animal they are saying. If they're saying bears, if they're saying lions, it goes in the F tier. But if they're saying bears or some other omnivorous animals, then it goes in the D tier. So I'm going to put it in the D tier. Okay, so we've gone through, let's see. You have gone through 12 arguments, right? And yeah, so there's some interesting ones coming up. There's going to be a lot of controversial ones. Oh man, I forgot to tell you this. There's going to be a lot of controversial ones towards the end, and then we're going to end it with at least one S tier argument, the special one. That the S stands for special. It's the most difficult to debunk. So we're going to do that at the end. So definitely stick around for that. And there's going to be a lot of controversy towards the end. I'm going to be getting really raw, right? So definitely stick around for that. Okay, let's do the next one. The next argument is, okay. So I couldn't find a proper proper icon for this, but I'm just going to go with this as it's going to be like eating animals is natural, right? So yeah, I'm just going to use this icon, but if you can't figure out what that is, well, I'm just saying it now, so you're going to have to watch the replay for that. Right. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this on replay, there should be timestamps down below, unless I've forgotten. Anyway, eating animals is natural. Yeah, sure, that's true. That's true. But like, what is natural, right? What is natural is not what is necessarily moral. Human beings naturally eat meat, for sure. But human beings naturally also kill each other. Human beings naturally also rape each other. But that doesn't mean that these things are morally okay, right? These things aren't morally okay. So yeah, that's an easy point to debunk. This is definitely an F-tier argument. For sure. Okay, now the next argument is that the animals, that's what they're bred for. That's their purpose. But just think about this in a human sort of context. In a human context. Imagine if I raised humans in my backyard to then eat them. Like, how messed up would that be? Or sometimes you don't even have to take it that far. Sometimes you can just say, well, there's dogs bred into existence. There are dogs bred into existence in like some parts of Eastern Asia or even some parts of India. Is that okay? You just have to ask that, and the people just go, well, berserk, and like, no, that's not okay, that's not okay. So this is an easy one to answer. Just say how would it look like in a human context. This is an F-tier argument. We can already see that most of the anti-vegan arguments are sort of F-tier arguments because they're just so bad, right? So yeah, the next one is humane slaughter. Humane slaughter. It's that the animals are killed humanely. They don't feel a thing. They don't feel a thing. They're just alive, and they're just dead. They don't feel a thing. They don't suffer at all. To which I would like to ask this question. So this is the way to respond to that really, really quickly, right? Would you want your companion animal, your dog, your cat, your hamster, to be, if they had to be put down, would you want that to be done in a slaughterhouse? If you ask that question to most people, right? If you ask that question to most people, the answer that they give is obviously not. So nothing humane happens in a slaughterhouse. They know that too. Otherwise, they would take their dogs, their cats, and so forth, when they need to be put down, they would take them to the slaughterhouse and not to the vet, right? So that's just a dishonest argument. I'm going to say that this is an E-tier argument. Okay, next one. Next is that the animals would take over. The animals would take over, and yeah, the animals would take over the world. I don't buy this. It's like I don't know what they're talking about. Are they talking about like a Planet of the Apes uprising or that kind of thing? I don't know, but maybe what they mean is that there will be too many animals, right? That's another argument that people make, that we could club together with this. The thing is that people are not going vegan overnight, right? The people are not going vegan overnight. No one is going vegan overnight. It's going to happen gradually. So the reason that there are so many animals is because that they are bred into existence. So it's like you're throwing fuel on one point of a fire and trying to extinguish it with by eating animals. Eating animals to solve the overpopulation problem of animals is like throwing fuel on one side of a fire and then throwing water on the other side. You're just solving a problem that you're creating. So yeah. I suppose that's the analogy to go with. And this I'm going to say is it an F tier or an E tier? This is a terrible argument. This is an F tier. The next one. The next one is, the animals would go extinct. You vegans will make animals go extinct. But here's the thing. The species, the collected species, doesn't feel pain. The individual does. Right? So it doesn't matter to each individual whether or not there are hundreds of thousands of other individuals of the same species in existence. What matters to them is whether or not they're suffering, right? So each animal that is bred into existence, they go through a life of hell to be ultimately processed for some kind of meat or eggs or dairy. They wouldn't be suffering if the species went extinct, right? The point of ethics is, if it is anything, it is to not cause like unnecessary, unfair suffering, right? So yeah, if the species goes extinct, well, so what? Right? The point is that the animals won't be suffering anymore, and the fact that animals won't be suffering is a good thing, and the fact that the species won't exist is like more to the point of humans being able to see them, right? That's just not an argument to be breeding these animals into existence. So let's say this is a more difficult one to answer, right? So I'm going to say that this is like a D tier argument for sure. Okay, the next one. Without human beings, the animals would suffer. So we're doing them a favor, really, by bringing them into this world and by taking care of them. First of all, we're not taking care of them, right? We're exploiting them, right? That is not the definition of taking care. So we can just leave them alone. And again, as I previously said, the numbers would gradually decrease to the point that they wouldn't exist anymore. So it's completely fine. They wouldn't be suffering. So this is an F tier argument, for sure. Okay, the next one. Okay, the next one is kind of similar, but it's a separate argument that people make, so I put it as a separate argument. Is that we're doing them a favor, really, by bringing them into this world. Otherwise, they wouldn't ever live. But think of it this way. Think of two parents. Think of two parents who have a baby and then abuse the child when the child grows up a little bit. And their argument is, well, without us, this child wouldn't exist in the first place. So we're doing him or her a favor, really, by sort of bringing them into existence, even if we're abusing them. You're bringing them into a life of hell. And the animals go through something that almost no parent, puts their child through, right? Even the most abusive ones, right? They don't put their child through the kind of hell that animals go through. So if you wouldn't accept it in that case, if you wouldn't accept it in the case of the child, why would we accept it in the case of these animals? Makes no sense. Right? So this one's an E tier argument. It's because a little more difficult to explain than the F tier ones, but it's just a really terrible argument for sure. Okay. How many have we gone through so far? Okay, we've gone through 19 arguments. So this is argument number 20, folks. It's a milestone. It's a milestone. We're going through rather fast. I think we should slow down a little bit, don't you think? We're going through these really fast. Let's slow down a little bit. So the next argument is that people make is that human rights are more important. Human rights are more important. But here's the sort of crazy idea. Here's the crazy idea. You can care about human rights while not abusing animals. How about that? I'm not asking you. Sorry about that. Whoa. I'm not asking you to be an animal rights activist. I'm asking you to be vegan, right? I'm asking you to not help the animals. I'm asking you to not harm the animals, right? I'm asking you to not harm the animals. So you can care about human rights while not harming animals, right? So yeah. So this is a terrible argument, but it's more difficult to debunk than the F tier one, so we're going to put it in E tier argument. Next, it's the food chain, though. It's the food chain. You can see I've used this sort of little fish eating other fish. So yeah, but the thing is that what is human beings are not part of this food chain that people talk about, right? Human beings are not part of the food chain in the sense of a lion being in the food chain. And a food chain is a human concept, right? The animals don't care about it. The food chain is how it describes how one animal eats another animal, eats another animal, and so forth. The animals don't care about that. To the animals, like it's just a description of how one organism eats another organism eats another animal. But that's not how we necessarily need to live. When we change how we live, right, then the food chain is going to be something else, right? When we eat something else, it's descriptive. Again, it describes how things happen in nature. It's not a prescription for how things should happen in nature, right? That's just another phrasing of a similar argument we've addressed before. So I'm gonna put this. Let's see. Should we put it in the E tier or the F tier? We're putting so many of these arguments. I would say it's an F tier argument, for sure. Okay, the next argument. So we're done with 21 arguments. The next is the circle of life. The circle of life argument. So the circle of life argument is a quotation from The Lion King, which is a children's cartoon. It's a really good cartoon. I really enjoyed it. But people are literally quoting a children's cartoon to harm animals, right? But yeah, let's go through it. I'm not saying that it's a children's cartoon, therefore it's a bad argument. Children's cartoons can sometimes make good points. But yeah, let's go through it. The circle of life. What we put animals through is not the circle of life. It is the circle of torture and death, right? And the circle of life, it refers to 2 points. It refers to life, to birth, and to death, right? But there's so many things in between that need to be addressed. Right? That need to be addressed. In the meantime, right, during their life, an animal either suffers or flourishes, or suffers and flourishes. Why would we want to cause unnecessary suffering where it's not necessary? Right? They will die at some point, but it's not the end point that matters. It's also the journey, right? Because we're addressing a children's cartoon, let's use that kind of language. It's also the journey that matters, right? So yeah, it's not just about those 2 points. So we shouldn't cause the suffering where it's not necessary, right? So yeah, this is a terrible argument. We're going to put this in the E tier. The next one. Oh, by the way, when I sort of addressed this, I said it's not the circle of life, it's the circle of torture and death. That is, by the way, a quote from one of my favorite activists, Gary Yourofsky, right? So yeah, keep that in mind. I would like to attribute to that to him. It's not a quote from me. It's not a quote from me. So yeah. So the next one. Plants feel pain. The next one is plants feel pain. This is just not true. This is just not true. Plants don't feel pain, right? This is just not true in the sense that, just think about this. What is the purpose of pain? Like, for example, if you pinch me, I know to take my hand out of there. If I touch a hot stove, I know to take my hands off of there. I do these things because the purpose of pain is to tell me to not do things that cause me pain. It is the purpose of pain is to tell me that these things are harmful, don't do it again. So, yeah. But what purpose would that have for plants? Plants cannot move away from danger. So they have no point in being able to feel pain, because that would be a completely useless feature for them. Right? So yeah. I'm going to put this in the... because you do need to know about evolution in order to debunk this, right, properly. So yeah, and you could also say that plants don't have the nervous system to be able to process pain. That's another point that you could make. So I'm going to put this in the D tier. Actually not in the D tier. I'm going to put this in the E tier. It's just a terrible argument. It's not worth the D tier. It's gonna be in the sort of yeah, it's gonna be in the E tier. The next argument is it's my personal choice though. It's my personal choice. Well, like, just think about how personal that choice is, really. How personal is it when there's a victim involved in your choice? It's not personal at all. It's a choice for sure, right? It's a choice for sure, but it's not a personal choice. Like anything that we do, right? Anything that we do is a choice, right? Unless we're forced to do it, of course. For example, if someone punches someone else, that is also a choice. If someone kills someone else, that is also a choice. But these are not choices that are justified. And if it is a choice, then why would you choose to be cruel, right? So yeah, it's a terrible argument. It's a choice. You're just describing something. You're just stating the obvious, but that doesn't justify it. So this is an F tier, for sure. So how many have we gone through so far? So 24. We're done with 24 arguments, right? We have... we're going through these really, really fast. We're not even 1 hour in when we're done with 24 arguments. Anyway, let's continue. Let's continue for sure. We're going to rearrange these a little bit later on, for sure. But let's continue. The 25th argument is, what about people's jobs? Like, this is such a noble argument, isn't it? It's not. It's totally not. But just think about this. What about people's jobs? When people go vegan, what will all the slaughterhouse workers do? What will all the butchers do? Well, they'll get other jobs. That's what they will do, right? That's what they will do. Um, yeah, so it's like when Netflix came around, did you care about all the blockbuster workers? You didn't. You didn't. So no, that's a terrible argument. It's an F tier argument. By the way, we're done with 25 arguments. That's a milestone, right? That's a great milestone. So let's carry on with these. By the way, if you're enjoying the stream, then it would be greatly appreciated if you could, if you just leave a tip or just leave a donation. That's really how I'm able to do all of this and do all of these live streams for you. And it really helps the channel, you know. And you can even ask questions or submit requests. And I'll respond to 100% of them for sure. And if you want to show your comment on the screen, use the super chat feature or the link in the pinned comment. It really helps. Thank you. Anyway, let's carry on. Okay, vegans are all hippies. That's the next argument, or it's like stating something, I guess. Stating something, but well, I am clearly one of the least hippie people that you could find, right? I don't want to say logical, but I am very monotonous, I guess. Very monotonous. I'm very sciencey, I guess. But yeah, I'm not hippie. So that's clearly one example of a vegan not being a hippie. So if you don't like the hippie stereotype, just be a vegan who's not a hippie. I don't know. That's just a terrible argument. So we're going to put that one in the F tier. There are so many F tier arguments. Veganism, the next argument is that veganism is a cult. Veganism is a cult. It's not. Veganism is leaving a cult. Okay, veganism is when you leave a cult. So, think of how many meat eaters there are in the world, right? Like 99% of the world is non-vegan, and just look at the fact that that's basically 8 billion people. But it's 75 arguments that we're dealing with, and I've been vegan a long time, and these are most of the arguments that I've ever heard, all the arguments I've ever heard. So 8 billion people repeat just 75 arguments over and over and over again. Doesn't that sound like a cult, right? That seems to be a cultic thing to do. Veganism, what's cultic about veganism? Nothing, right? It's like leaving this cult of people who keep saying the same things, right? So yeah, this is an E tier argument because you do have to know what you have to say to be able to refute this. Okay, the next argument. It doesn't make a difference if I go vegan. It doesn't make a difference if you go vegan. Okay, let's take it at a time. Sure, I want to say sure. It won't make a difference by one person alone going vegan, but it's sort of a droplet effect. When one person goes vegan, their social circle knows about it, right? That person's social circle knows about it, and they are informed about veganism, and maybe some of them do go vegan, right? And yeah, and that has a sort of ripple effect, right? Where it sort of, and those other people's social circles also know about them, and that goes through, right? And yeah, so there's that. Also, there's this saying in Hindi, which is, I'm going to say it in Hindi first, then I'm going to translate it for you. It says, "Boond boond se hi sagar banta hai." So which translates to, an ocean is made drop by drop. So it's basically that. It's like one person at a time until it's a huge, like one drop at a time until it's a huge ocean. One person at a time until there's enough people to make social and political change. So it's an honest argument. It's an honest argument for sure. So we're gonna put this in the C tier. But it's like it's a more difficult one to respond to. But so, sure. Okay, the next argument is you can't be fully vegan. You can't be fully vegan, referring to things like leather car seats or like leather seats on a bus, things like that, or headphones maybe. Like, but the thing is, this is something called an appeal to futility. Okay, that is called an appeal to futility. Yeah. So just because you can't eliminate all harm from your life doesn't mean that you are justified to cause additional harm when you don't have to, right? So yeah, that's just a poor argument. That's just an excuse. It's not even an argument. We're gonna put that in the F tier. There are so many F tier arguments. Maybe it's just my bias, but yeah. Or maybe it's a little bit more difficult, so we're gonna put this in the E tier. Okay, the next argument is you kill ants. You kill ants when you walk. So you're a hypocrite, you see. You're a hypocrite. So don't go telling other people not to kill animals. Well, I don't know about other vegans, but I don't kill ants I don't kill ants intentionally, right? And I think that's what most vegans do. They don't go around killing insects when they don't have to. They don't. They do it when accidentally, or maybe they do it to save their own environment, to save their house from cockroaches and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's not an argument, because that's not an argument to cause harm for to cause harm for sensory pleasure, for taste pleasure. That's not an excuse. Just because you do it accidentally sometimes, it's not an excuse to do it all the time or intentionally at some times for taste pleasure, right? That's not an argument. But it is a little more difficult than the F tier one, so we're going to put it in the E tier. The next argument is that animals, these animals, they cannot survive without us. They cannot survive without us. Therefore, we need to keep doing these things to them. This is quite similar to one of the arguments we've covered so far, but it is slightly different. So, and it is said slightly differently on some occasions. So we're going to address that as well. So the thing about the fact that some animals like cows and goats and chickens for sure, they cannot survive in the wild. That is true. But why is it that they cannot survive in the wild? Is it because we've raised them, we've breeded them into a state where they are just incapable of doing that? That is the case, right? That is definitely why it is the case. So yeah, that's it's our fault that they are in this situation, and the way to solve that is not to continue to exploit them all the time. The solution to that is to stop breeding them into existence and so that they don't have to suffer in this life that we bring them into, right? That's the solution. So we're gonna put that in the E tier. Okay, next argument. So we're at the 1 hour marks, folks. So how is it going? Are you enjoying the stream so far? Are you enjoying the stream so far? If you're enjoying the stream, please leave a comment and let me know if you're enjoying the stream. If you think that there could be better ways to respond to some of these arguments, then do let me know. Do let me know if you think there's a certain better way to refer to one of these arguments. If you think you've heard some arguments that I've not covered so far, yeah, let me know. And if you want to make sure that I see your comment, because in the chat there's like lots and lots of comments, use the super chat feature or the link in the pinned comment to submit your comments so that I can see it for sure and put it up on the screen, so that people can know how cool you are, right? So yeah, let's do that. It really helps support the stream as well. And that's how I'm able to continue to do these streams, right? So yeah, please use the super chat feature. Yeah, let's continue. So the next argument against veganism is humans and animals are just different, right? Humans and animals are just different. And that is true, right? That is very true. Humans and animals are different. But that is not an excuse, that is not an argument to kill these animals, because humans and animals are different in lots of ways, just as I am different from a white person, just as I am different from a woman, I am different from other individuals, right? But I am not different from any of these individuals in a way that is morally relevant, right? I'm not different in a way that's morally relevant. And in a similar vein, right? In a similar vein, animals and humans are not different in a way that is morally relevant, right? So yeah, right? So just because we're different doesn't mean there's a morally relevant difference. So yeah. And if someone doesn't believe that, ask them to name a morally relevant difference, and then ask, once they've said that, if for example they say intelligence, then you can just ask them, well, if you found a human being with the same intelligence level with that of a pig, would that mean that we can kill that pig for our temporary taste pleasure? No, right? So there is no morally relevant difference between humans and animals. That is the point that I would like to make. Okay, so this one's a little more difficult to explain, more difficult to refute. So for the first time in a long time, we're gonna put this in the B tier. Right? Yeah, we're gonna put this in the B tier. The next argument is that veganism is just a phase. But before that, we do have a tip from, I'm going to say, a friend of mine, Emotion. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Emotion. Because it would be really embarrassing if I don't know how to pronounce the name of a friend. But yeah, Emotion has tipped $2. Thank you, Emotion. It means a lot. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue. If you would like your message or tip or your name sort of read out aloud on the stream as well, please use the link on the pinned comment. And yeah, that's how you get me to say your name and thank you, right? That's cool, right? So yeah, do that. I'm just kidding. But yeah, if you would like to support the stream, that's how you do it. Thank you. Thank you, Emotion. But anyway, the next argument is veganism is just a phase. And I'm sure so many of you must have heard this from your parents, from your relatives, and so forth, right? Like when I first went vegan, When I first went vegan, I heard this like all the time, right? And it was just so annoying. But it's so what if it is a phase? Like, how is that morally relevant to whether or not you should kill an animal? Like, for some vegans, for sure, it is maybe a phase. Some people go vegan and then they go ex-vegan and they make ex-vegan YouTube videos. But that is not a deciding factor on whether or not like it is ethical to kill and eat other animals, right? So yeah, I'm gonna say that this is an F tier argument for sure. The next argument, I would say, is a really difficult argument to debunk, because on first glance, it might seem like it's very difficult to refute. So the argument is called the crop deaths argument, and there are multiple ways that you could respond to this. The argument goes something like this. The argument goes that because animals are killed in crop production, the insects, the mice, the squirrels, and so forth, therefore, it is just the same as eating animals directly, right? And there are just so many small animals that are killed, right? But here are a few things that you could say to that. The animals whom non-vegans eat, right, they are also fed crops. Okay, they're also fed crops. So whatever the number of animals that are being killed in crop production, that is just so much worse in the case of non-vegan food than it is in the case of vegan food, right? Whoops. So yeah. So that's one way you could respond to that. But some people say, well, what about grass-fed animals? Well, the way to respond to that is that grass-fed animals, there's a reason that grass-fed is not the way that most animals are raised. It's because it's just not possible to do it. For example, right now, animal agriculture takes up 26% of all of the land on the planet. Of all the land on the planet. It takes 83% of all the farmland on the planet, and it takes up 26% of all the land on the planet. Okay? So, if you raised grass-fed animals, right, then grass-fed animals require 270% more land. So if you do the calculations, it comes down to something like, if you switch to grass-fed animals instead of factory farmed animals, then what would happen is that you would take up 96% of all the land on Earth, and that is just not feasible, right? That is just not feasible. So yeah, I'm gonna say that since you need to know how to respond to the because you need to know the response to the grass-fed argument, it is quite difficult, this one. So we're going to put this as an A tier argument, because if you don't know how to respond to the grass-fed thing, you're done for. So we're going to put this as an A tier argument for sure. Okay, before we proceed, we have a donation from Marcelo, right, who says, keep up the great work. Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for the support. It really means a lot, and that is how I'm able to continue to do this. Thank you for the support. It means a lot. This is how I'm able to do these streams. Okay, the next anti-vegan argument. How many arguments are we through? Oh, we're almost through half of them. Would you believe that? Uh, okay, so we're done with 34 arguments so far, and we're going to do the 35th argument now. The 35th argument is that vegan food is shit. Vegan food tastes terrible. Okay, few things. That is not true. I've had vegan food. It's amazing, right? In fact, when you go vegan, you really learn how to cook, right? You really learn how to cook. And you learn to use all of these flavors, and you learn to use all of these sort of spices and condiments and that kind of stuff. And it really teaches you the art of cooking. So it's just not true that vegan food is terrible, right? It's just not true. Second, even if it were the case that vegan food is terrible, how is that relevant? How is that relevant to the ethics of it? Like, even if vegan food did taste terrible, that would not be a justification to kill animals for their bodies. Like think of this. If someone, for example, didn't like any other kind of music, for example, and the only kind of music that they like was, let's say, non-vegan music, and the music was made by torturing animals, right? And they said, well, vegan music is terrible, the kind of music that doesn't require animals. Vegan music is terrible. Non-vegan music is where it's at. That's why I listen to this kind of music. That would make absolutely no sense. And that kind of person would be referred to as a psychopath. But that's exactly what we're doing in the case of taste, right? Even if it is the case that vegan food is terrible, that would not justify harming other animals for the taste pleasure of it. So we're going to put this in the F tier. Okay, so as I promised to you, we've now reached the veganism is too expensive part. The thing I've always said about this, is that only the ultra privileged think that veganism requires privilege, because they think of things like the cost of almond milk, right? They think of things like what is the cost of the Starbucks latte with the almond milk. They think that a Starbucks latte is like a basic need, but it's not, right? The rest of us know that things like rice, dal, rajma, chana, legumes, beans, which are cheap food products, by the way, these are enough to sustain a vegan diet. The rest of us know this stuff. Those of us who are not ultra privileged. So yeah, veganism only seems like a privilege when you are ultra privileged. So that's just not true. If you're going for fancy vegan alternatives, then sure, vegan food is going to seem expensive, but you don't have to eat those things in order to be vegan. That's the thing I'm reckoning. So you have to know the sort of how to respond to this. So I'm going to put this in the D tier. Let's continue. It is too time consuming. But the thing is, it's not though. It's not. When people talk about this, right, they talk about like being able to cook vegan food and that kind of stuff, and like cheap fast food being easily available. It's that eating healthy requires time, not eating vegan, right? You can have vegan junk food, right? And that's incredibly cheap, and you can have that easily, right? Or you can have non-vegan fast food and junk food, and that is available very easily. And but neither of those are healthy, right? You can have fries, for example, or potato nuggets, right? Those are junk food that's easily available. Or you can have like chicken nuggets that are easily available, and these are both like equal in terms of the time consumption. But if you want to eat healthy as a vegan or a non-vegan, it's going to take some time. So it's not about, you're comparing two different things, from healthy vegan food to non-vegan junk food. That's, of course, there's going to be a time difference. But if you're going to compare unhealthy vegan food to unhealthy non-vegan food, or healthy vegan food to healthy non-vegan food, then it's going to take the same amount of time. Eating healthy requires time, not eating vegan, right? So, yeah, that is what it is, right? So yeah, let's continue. Okay, so we're gonna put this in the D tier. Okay, before we continue, we do have 2 tips. Thank you so much. So a tip from Vegan By The Way, or Vegan BTW, who donated $20. Wow, that is a lot of dollars. Who says, awesome work, Soytheist. Thank you so much. Means a lot. I'll see if I can put this on the screen. No, for some reason I can't. But anyway, thank you for the tip. It means a lot. Vegan BTW. I'll just read out the names in case a comment comes through. In case a tip comes through. Streamlabs tip. Again, use the link in the pinned comment if you want me to read out your name and let people know how awesome you are, right? So yeah, do that. So the next argument, the next tip that I've received comes from John Crondis, who says, only argument I'm a bit uncertain of, what about accepting animal products only as gifts, not ever as a purchase of habit, which then means you buy less, which creates less suffering overall. This includes aesthetic harms, Buddhists usually, not Jains. So this is an argument for sure that I have later on in the video that I will definitely respond to. You can see here that this is can you see this? Yeah, this one. So this is about the Buddhists accepting gifts. So I'll get to that definitely. Or should we do that now? Interesting conundrum. Yeah, let's do that now. I think you can definitely reject gifts that are not vegan, right? You can definitely reject gifts that are not vegan. Or at least you can make it very clear that you don't like non-vegan gifts. And I think the problem with this is that some Buddhist monks, they will say things like, no, I can't reject a gift that has been given to me, so I can't be vegan. No, of course you can. And the problem with accepting such gifts, even though you're not buying them, is that it perpetuates animals as something that, or as some things, right, instead of some ones. And that in turn, this idea of animals as things, as objects, as commodities, that is the thing that keeps them in the commodity status, and that ultimately perpetuates more harm. So of course you can reject gifts that are that come from suffering, right? For example, if someone served you a meal that was prepared by a slave, you wouldn't accept that meal, right? So why would you accept a meal that comes from basically a body part of a slave? You shouldn't accept that either. At least I don't. And if that's an argument for not being vegan, it's a terrible argument. But you do know how you do have to know how to respond to this, because it's slightly more difficult. So I'm going to put this in the D tier or C tier. Where does it go? What do you think? For now, I'm going to put this in the C tier, but let me know if you think if it should be in the D tier. By the way, John Crondis tipped $10. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. It means so much to me. The next argument against veganism is, where is it? Wait, hold on. It's something to do with change, I think. Yeah. It's too difficult to change. It's too difficult. Well, I'm going to say that this is an honest argument for many people, right? It's an honest argument for many people that it is too difficult for them to change. But like, put yourself in the sort of perspective of the victim in this case. Right? What do you think is more difficult? For you to change to being a vegan, or is it more difficult for the animals to continue to be tortured and be kept in a life of captivity? Which do you think is more difficult? And once you do that, veganism suddenly seems like the much more easier thing, right? So like one of my friends, I don't know if I can call him a friend, but one of my acquaintances, Jack Hancock, better known online as Humane Hancock, recently did a video where he went around asking people, what would you rather be? Right? Would you rather be a vegan for the rest of your life, or would you be a pig in a factory farm for a month? And most of the people he asked said that they would rather be vegan, right? Because it's so obvious, and I gotta give it to those people for their honesty, that they wouldn't be a factory farmed animal for even 1 month, and they would rather be the vegan for the rest of their lives. So again, it's difficult for some people, for sure, but it's not more difficult than what it is for the animals. So I'm going to say that this is a D tier argument, because it's an honest argument. We have so many in the F tier, because most anti-vegan arguments are F tier arguments, let's be honest. Okay. The next argument is related to this. They say that they like the taste of animal products way too much. They like the taste of animal products way too much. It is a similar argument, but again, they say they like the taste of animal products too much. It's a similar argument, but it is a little different in how it is phrased. So let's address that too. The way to respond to this one in specific about the taste of, let's say they like the taste of, let's say they like the taste of meat too much, or the taste of cheese too much, or the taste of something too much. The way to respond to that is to ask if someone, for example, like the sound of hearing animals suffer too much, what would we think of such a person? What would we think of such a person? We would think of them as completely immoral, right? And that is what's happening here in this case as well. That is the sensory pleasure of something, right? The sensory pleasure of something doesn't justify harming other animals or harming other individuals, right? So that's how we have to respond to that. Like just as a sound, just as hearing pleasure doesn't justify causing harm, neither does taste pleasure, neither is visual pleasure, and so forth. So we're gonna put this in the F tier. The next one is someone says that they're addicted to the taste of meat, right? They're addicted to it. This is not true. This is just not true. We think we are addicted to these things, but these things are not. We're not. Someone can't be addicted to these things in the sense that you're addicted to drugs. We might feel like when we first go vegan, because we're so habituated to them, it might feel like there's something weird and we have these sort of obsessions and compulsions to eat those things again. But once you've sort of stopped doing them, it's much, much easier than it is to stop doing drugs, for example. So you're not a patient in the sense that a drug addict is a patient. It is just not the case. Otherwise, there just wouldn't be so many people going vegan. If the entire world were addicted to drugs, there wouldn't be as many drug-free people as there are vegans in the world, right? So that is just not true, and it's quite similar to the last one, but it's a more medical term that is used here. So yeah, it's not true, and it's not true. It can seem addictive, but it's not. We're gonna put this in the D tier. Let's continue. Oh, by the way, before we proceed, I'd like to let you know that if you have a certain anti-vegan argument that you think I might not cover, then you can ask that. You can ask that using the Super Chat feature or the Streamlabs donation feature. And if it's already in the list of arguments that I plan to cover, I will cover it now so that you don't have to wait until later, right? So you can do that as well. Or if it's completely not in the list, I will just answer that for you especially, right? So yeah, do that. Oh, that was a huge one. That was a huge burp. These are caffeinated drinks. So, yeah, they're making me burp a lot. Okay, the next argument is that one needs dairy products for calcium. Dairy products for calcium. But like this is just a consequence of a lot of propaganda, right? This is just a consequence of a lot of propaganda. Like there is calcium in so many foods, and you can just Google it, right? You can just Google it. It's so easy to find vegan sources of calcium. But like you don't see an ad for plant-based sources of calcium. Why is that? It's because the dairy industry spends a lot of money in advertising milk as the source of calcium, right? So that they can make money. But it's not true. There are so many sources of calcium that you can find online, right? Some examples would be spinach, kale, chia seeds, and tahini, and so forth. You can just Google that, yeah, for sure. So we're gonna put that, since this is just an argument that is not true. Where's my mouse? Oh, yeah. We're gonna put this in the E tier because you do have to know some things about nutrition in order to be able to respond to this. Okay, let's continue. Okay, the next one is kind of similar. It is that you need meat for protein. Again, this is like a very similar argument, but with meat, with the propaganda around meat. Yeah, it is like propaganda around the meat industry, right? But again, you can get protein. So the argument is that you need to eat meat for protein, but that is just simply not true, right? You can get protein from so many sources like soybeans, from chickpeas, from legumes, and so forth, right? So that's again not true. And we're gonna put this in the same tier. It's gonna go in the E tier. Okay, so the next argument for against veganism is this kind of abuse, this horrific abuse of animals, doesn't happen in my country though, right? It doesn't happen in my country. So the question that I would like to ask you is, what kind of magical country do you come? And everyone says this. Everyone from every single country on the planet says this. So the question to ask to them is, what kind of magical country do you come from where you can get the meat from an animal without killing the animal? Because you do need to stop consuming meat in order to be vegan, right? And what kind of magical country do you come from where a dairy farmer will just wait, for a cow to get pregnant when his business depends on it? What kind of magical country is this? So yeah, it's not a valid argument. It's just not true. It's what it is. So we're gonna put this in the F tier. I'm using India because India is my country. I'm using the map of India for that reason. So the next argument. The next argument is that animals are not killed. Just as I mentioned, the meat thing. The next argument is that the animals aren't killed in the egg industry. They aren't killed in the dairy industry. So what's the point of going vegan instead of like vegetarian, for example? So the point about that is that this is not about just the death of animals intrinsically. It is about animal suffering, right? It is about causing unnecessary animal suffering. It's about causing unnecessary animal suffering. And in the dairy industry, for example, what happens is people will artificially inseminate the cow, right? People will artificially inseminate the cow, and the cow will carry her baby for 9 months, and at the end of the 9 months, when she gives birth, her baby will be taken away from her. Her baby will be taken away from her. And if it's a male calf, the male calf is killed for veal, I suppose, in Western countries. In India, what is done is they are starved to death, right? And then they are stuffed with hay, right? And that corpse stuffed with hay is kept in front of the mother, right? It's called a kal bacha, so that the mother keeps lactating. If that is not the most cruel thing you've ever heard of, I don't know what is. And of course, if it's a female calf, she will just go through the same kind of horrific abuse that I'm just going to continue to describe now. So after this has happened, right, after the baby has been separated from their mother, this process will be repeated again. And this will be repeated over and over and over again until the cow cannot produce any more milk, and then they are slaughtered for their meat, right? So this So the dairy industry, in the dairy industry, animals do die, right? So that's not even true in that case. Let's talk about the egg industry. So in the egg industry, for example, male baby chicks are useless because male chicks these chicks are a different breed than the kind of chickens that are raised for their meat. So male baby chicks are killed at birth when they are 1 day old. As soon as it's found out that they are males, they are killed. So their first and last experience of this world is being suffocated in a bag or being put through a macerator or a grinder. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that you're funding by continuing to eat eggs and funding the egg industry. So yeah, that's not very good now, is it? And when chickens lay what am I saying? When hens lay eggs, the calcium is drawn from their bones, right? So they suffer from osteoporosis, they suffer from various kind of illnesses because the calcium is just sucked out of their body by laying eggs, because the eggshell has to be made of calcium, right? So yeah, that's just another way in which buying eggs, you're funding the suffering of chickens, right? So yeah. So we're gonna put this. You do have to know a lot of things in order to be able to respond to this. So we're gonna put this in the D tier. How many arguments have we been through now? 44, 30, and the Buddha one, the Buddhist one. So yeah. Oh wait, this is not the donation from the donation for Buddhist kind of thing. This is the one for donation. This Buddha one is a completely different one. It's about how Gautam Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, he used to eat animals, so it's okay to eat animals. So that's a spicy one coming up for later. I'm going to get really raw and get really honest. So stick around for that. So I've been through 45 arguments, 30 more to go. So the next argument against veganism is cows produce too much milk and we're just taking the extra milk. First of all, that is not true. That is not true in most cases. It is true in some cases, but we'll get to that. In most cases, what happens is that the cow doesn't produce extra milk. We just take all the milk from her and the baby starves. We just take the baby, we separate the baby, we take all the milk. So that's not true. But in some cases, there are some cows that are genetically bred so as to produce extra milk. But why is it that they produce extra milk? Why is it that they produce extra milk? The reason they produce extra milk is because they're genetically bred. So what is the solution to that? The solution to that is not to breed such cows into existence forever so that you can just solve the problem that you've created. It is to not breed these cows into existence in the first place, right? It is to not breed these cows into existence in the first place. So yeah. So that's not an argument against veganism. You do have to know a few things to answer this, so we're going to put this in the E tier. So that's how this is looking so far. Let me just quickly show you how this is looking. This is how it's looking so far. We're going to put this back in here. Whoops. Yeah, here we go. So the next argument, what is this? Okay. I only buy free range, organic, or high welfare sort of animal products. These are the same people, by the way, who say that veganism is too expensive, but they then go and buy these very expensive sort of very expensive things that are non-vegan things. So it doesn't really matter to the animals that they have it better than other animals. It doesn't matter to an exploited animal that they have it better than other animals who have also been exploited. It's somewhat like saying to a poor person in the United States, well, you should be who is out on the streets, who is homeless, saying to them, well, you better be grateful for this because people in Africa have it worse, people in Kenya have it worse, people in India have it worse. It just makes no sense, right? And so yeah, that makes no sense. And just as that would not be a valid argument as to why a poor person should not demand more of the government for better welfare standards and that kind of stuff, it is not an argument to not be vegan. We're gonna put this in the D tier. Okay, the next argument against veganism, against being vegan, is that someone only buys like backyard, uses only backyard hens for their eggs and that kind of stuff. And the hens are really happy. And a friend of mine asked me this question earlier today before the live stream. So we're going to pay extra attention to this. And yeah. So yeah, okay. So the problem with using backyard hens and buying milking only backyard cows, I suppose, is that it continues to perpetuate the commodity status of animals. It perpetuates the status of animals as sort of products and not as individuals. Like you wouldn't ever look at like human women, like for example of a marginalized race, for example, and say, well, I have them in my backyard and I treat them really well, and I take the milk from them. That would be messed up, right? If you did that to human women of a marginalized race. But you're kind of doing the same thing with animals, for example. When we're doing the same thing with female animals, in this case, where you're perpetuating their image as a sort of object. And even if now this is a little bit different from the human women, but even if it were the case that these animals are happy, which I doubt, we'll get to that why. Even if it is the case that they're happy, it perpetuates the status of them as commodities, and that in turn causes more harms to animals in the sort of bigger picture setting of things, right? So that, I think, is why backyard hens and backyard cows and that kind of stuff, that kind of argument, I should say, is not a good argument to be not vegan. And we're going to put this in the D tier because it's definitely more difficult to explain than the F tier and the E tier arguments. So we're getting there. Again, let's get to this. Yeah, let's get through this. Someone says that they don't love animals, so they won't go vegan. But the thing is, you don't have to love animals in order to be vegan, right? That's not a necessity of being vegan at all. So, for example, You don't have to love someone. You don't have to love someone at all on the streets, for example, to recognize the fact that you don't have to, to recognize the fact that they don't deserve to be killed. You don't love that person. You don't love that person at all. And but you don't say that they deserve to be killed. So why would you say that of an animal? You don't have to love someone in order to recognize the fact that they don't deserve to be killed, right? Yeah. Why am I out of focus? Let me try to fix that. Yeah, back in focus. So we're going to put this in the F tier. Now, someone says that they hate animals. Someone says that they hate animals, or that just don't, not just that they don't love animals, that they hate animals, or they just don't care. They just don't care about animals. Well, you could even hate someone, right? You could even hate someone and say that they don't deserve to die. For example, you can hate a serial killer, not a serial killer, some other kind of, not a serial killer, just you can hate your enemy, right? You could hate your political opponent. You could hate someone who is like who does the worst, who has done the worst of crimes, maybe, and you could still say that they don't deserve to be tortured, right? They don't deserve to be tortured. So why would you say, like, they don't deserve to be treated like animals? This is a phrase that people use, right? They were treated like animals. And that is a problem, you see, when we're not okay with people being treated like animals, but we're okay with innocent animals being treated like animals, right? Animals are so victimized that people don't even see them as victims anymore, right? People don't even see them as victims anymore. So you don't have to, like, if you wouldn't accept torture for the worst of your enemies, if you wouldn't accept the kind of treatment that animals receive in factory farms for the worst of your enemies, why would you accept that kind of treatment for factory farmed animals, or even just animals in general? You wouldn't accept that kind of treatment for any of your enemies, so why would you accept that treatment for innocent animals, is the point I'm trying to make. So this is a little more, I just don't care, is slightly, definitely more different than I don't love animals. So we're going to put this up in the C tier. So the next argument is that someone's parents just won't let them go vegan. And I think in this case, there's just not a solution. If your parents truly won't let you go vegan and you're dependent on them, you can't create a scene at home, and because then that's going to be like a whole another world of problems for you. So I sympathize with you. I sympathize with you for sure. But yeah, I think one of the things that you could do, the reason parents sometimes won't let people go vegan, won't let their children go vegan, is because they're concerned about their health. So you could show them documentaries about your health, about health, right? Like What the Health, Forks Over Knives, Game Changers, that kind of stuff. And make them realize that this is perfectly healthy. But even then, if they can't let you be vegan, so I guess that's just a good reason. That's just a genuine reason to not be vegan. So we're going to put this in the S tier, our first S tier argument. So here's how it's looking so far. Let's put it here. Yeah. So this is how it's looking so far. I'm going to go here. The S tier, A, B, C, D, E, and F. By the way, we're going to do a Q&A at the end of this stream. Right? We're going to do a Q&A at the end of the stream. So if you have any questions for me, you can submit them through the chat, and I'll try to get around to it. But if you want me to respond to your question for sure, right? If you want me to respond to your question for sure and to me to read your name out loud on the stream or to have your name show up on the screen, then definitely use the super chat feature or the link in the pinned comment to submit your question or any request that you might have. And I'll respond to them for sure. Any requests or questions submitted through the super chat or the Streamlabs donation link will be responded to for sure. Okay, next argument. Okay, the next argument that it is somewhat part of someone's culture. It is part of someone's culture or tradition to kill animals. Well, the thing is that it is a part of every culture to eat animals, right? But this culture dictate morality. Does culture justify doing anything? Like culture can be beautiful, but culture is great for things like clothing. It is great for things like clothing. It's great for things like music, dance, that kind of stuff. But not when it comes to issues of morality, because culture, it is part of every culture, for example, to think that women are some kind of property or of men, for example, or that women are these some kind of second-class citizens. It is part of basically every human culture we've ever found. But that is not justified. That is not a justified belief to hold, and that is not a justified position to have. It is not justified to act on those beliefs or principles just because they're part of culture, right? It is not justified to be a sexist based on culture. So yeah, that is an eat your argument. So the next argument is about soy. So people say that soy is terrible for the environment. Soy is terrible for the environment, and therefore, since soy is such a staple of vegan food, you shouldn't be vegan, and I can't be vegan for that reason. Okay, so the first thing that is that to point out here is that this can be applied more broadly, so we're going to do that. So some people, for example, say that eating avocados, for example, is detrimental to the environment, or eating quinoa, for example, is detrimental to the environment, and therefore someone can't be vegan. So if you have a problem with a specific vegan food, for example, then just don't eat that vegan food. For example, I have never eaten avocados. So yeah, do that. Don't eat that specific vegan food and you can still be vegan. You don't have... Veganism is a plant-based diet, right? It includes a plant-based diet, not a soy-based diet or an avocado-based diet or any of that kind of stuff. But the second point to make, and crucially the more important point to make here, is that most soy that is ever grown is fed to livestock. 83% of all the soy that is grown is fed to livestock, right? And therefore, if you truly are against if you're truly against soy farming, then you should stop consuming animal products, right? And someone might think when I said that 83%, oh no, not 83%, sorry, 78%. When someone says 78%, so the rest 22% is consumed by humans. No, not really. For the rest of it is used for human consumption, but it is used in things like petroleum and lipstick and that kind of stuff. For food, direct human food, it's only just like 6% or something like that. So most of the soy that is grown is for other animals, and only 6% of soy that is grown is for direct human food consumption. So yeah, if you're against soy production, you should definitely go vegan. So we're gonna put, since you have to know a lot of stuff, in order to be able to respond to this, we're gonna put this in the C tier. Okay, next argument against veganism. Some people say that they're vegetarian and that is enough. This is quite similar to one of the arguments we've covered so far, but let's address this too. Let's address this too, yeah. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. So we're gonna put this, okay, first let's address it. So the argument runs something like this, that a person is vegetarian and you don't have to go vegan. Veganism is too extreme. Being vegetarian is just enough. Yeah. So the thing is, vegetarians just contribute to one less form, or two less forms of animal exploitation, right? So vegetarians don't eat eggs and vegetarians don't drink dairy, but they're contributing to every other sort of injustice, every other form of animal injustice. That's like saying, well, let's say that someone just doesn't drink, to a vegetarian, this is, if you're a vegetarian, this is how absurd it sounds to me. To someone who just has stopped drinking milk and has stopped eating, let's say, eggs, right? And they continue to eat, they continue to eat everything else, right? They continue to eat meat, they continue to eat fish, and so forth. And they say, well, I'm doing all of these things, therefore I'm just as good as a vegetarian and I don't have to be vegan. That is how absurd you sound, right? That is how absurd you sound. So yeah, that's not a good argument. It's like continuing to eat meat. How does it matter whether the animal suffering ultimately ends up on your plate or not? It's all the same. We're gonna put this in the E tier. Or the D tier. Where does it go? E tier or D tier? I say E tier. So the next argument is someone has no idea about what they would eat if they went vegan, so they can't be vegan. This is kind of dishonest. If you have if you have an internet, and if you're watching this, for example, then you can just YouTube it, man. You can just YouTube it. You can just go onto YouTube and just look up nutritious vegan meal plans and that kind of stuff, and just make those, or just prepare those, or just order those, whatever it is. Just do that, and it's going to be fine. So it's a terrible argument, F tier. The next argument. Hunting is good for the environment. That's the next argument. This is just a terrible one. Just a terrible, terrible argument. Yeah, it's a terrible argument because there are other ways that you can help the environment instead of shooting animals through the heart, or shooting animals. You can help the ecosystem without doing that. And just imagine if someone, like, the most eco-friendly, like, if you want to hunt a certain specific animal in order to help the environment, the animal that you should be hunting is human beings, right? That's the animal that you should be hunting, because human beings are the animals that that have the most detrimental environmental effects, right? So if you shoot human beings, that would be the most environmentally friendly thing to do. But that is not an ethical thing to do now, is it? Right? So yeah, that if that is not a good enough reason to kill human beings, that is not a good enough reason to kill other animals either. And if you think that's not an honest comparison, then I would urge you to point out to me a difference between humans and other animals. We're going to put this in the D tier. Okay, the next argument is actually similar, but it's more difficult to respond to than the previous argument. It is, hunting animals is good because otherwise they would have a worse death, right? Therefore they hunt animals and therefore they can't be vegan. That's the argument. That's how the argument runs. Like animals, like it's better to kill an animal by shooting them than it is for them to like be killed by ripped open by a lion or something like that, or to dying through disease or something like that. But think about this in a human context, right? And we're doing this a lot, but that's really the best way to respond to these arguments, by thinking if this would apply in a human context and then asking for a difference. The fact that there are just so many humans around the world who die awful deaths, just awful deaths, dying of jaundice, or dying from typhoid, or dying from malaria and dengue fever, for example. I had dengue fever. It was terrible, and had it not been for modern medicine, I would be dead right now. But I survived thanks to modern medicine anyway. Yeah, but in that scenario, had there not been modern medicine, and someone came up to me before I was suffering and they shot me in the head and said, well, this guy is gonna die of dengue fever anyway, so I'm doing him a favor, really. Or just someone going to sick people in general and they're just shooting them in the head, and like, oh well, that person was gonna die anyway, and then shooting them, and not only just shooting them but then eating the corpse later on. That's kind of messed up, isn't it? So yeah, that's what you're doing when you're using that argument, that excuse. So this is slightly more difficult to explain, so we're going to put this in the C tier. Okay, next argument. Okay. The next argument is that fruits and vegetables have lots and lots of pesticides in them. So therefore it is unhealthy. Therefore I will eat animals. But the way to think about this is, again, what are these animals that you're eating eat? What do they eat? They eat these same crops that are also grown using pesticides and fertilizers and chemicals and that kind of stuff. So the animals have those chemicals too, and you're eating those animals instead. So you're eating the same chemicals, just through a middleman is what you're doing, right? So again, not a good argument, but you do have to know how to respond to this. This is an E tier argument. Okay, next thing. So the next argument is one that I have responded to very frequently on my channel. It is to say that veganism is a Western, like a white person thing. Not a Western thing. People don't phrase it as Western thing. Although there's a difference between a Western and a white person. But yeah, it's mostly phrased as a white person thing. It's not. And I will tell you why. because the origins of veganism, if you look, the earliest accounts of veganism that I know of is an Arabic poet who known as Al-Mari, who wrote a vegan poem, right? A vegan poem that I think we should read right now, right? We should read that right now. And yeah, and he made a case for veganism in a poem that he wrote like 1,000 years ago. Like that's the earliest known accounts of veganism. Vegan poem. So let's read that. Yeah, so this is the poem. And the title of the poem is I No Longer Steal from Nature. Right? That is the title of the poem. And here's how it goes. It says, I no longer steal from nature. You are diseased in understanding and relation. Come to me that you may hear something of sound truth. Do not unjustly eat the fish the water has given up. So he talks about fish, right? So that's one animal product. And do not desire as food the flesh of slaughtered animals, another animal product, or the white milk of mothers who intended its pure draught for their young, not noble ladies. So that's milk, that's another animal product. And do not grieve the unsuspecting birds by taking eggs, for injustice is the worst of crimes. That's another animal product. These are the sort of main animal products. And spare the honey which bees get industriously from the flowers of fragrant flowers, another animal product. For they did not store it that it might be belong to others, nor did they gather it for bounty and gifts. I wash my hands of all of this, and I wish that I perceived my way before my hair went grey. Al-Mari. So this is a Arabic poet who is making this case for veganism long before white people ever did. Like the word veganism, right? The word veganism, that comes from England for sure, but the concept behind veganism, right? This is much older and it doesn't come from white people. And to say that only white people can reach this moral standard where they don't harm animals, that in itself is a racist thing to do, right? That is the racist thing to do, not veganism. And it's something I call the soft bigotry of low expectations, to say that only white people can be moral, right? That's a racist thing to do, and that's sort of the that is the it's the racist thing to do, right? So yeah. And for this argument that it's a white people thing, I've used the flag of the European Union because that's where white people come from, Europe. So yeah. So this is definitely an A tier or a B tier argument. Where do you think it should go? On the A tier or the B tier? I'm gonna put it now on the A tier. Maybe the B tier. Where do you think this should go? Let me know. I'm a little confused about this one. Write your thoughts in the comments. For now, I'm putting in the B tier. Okay, the next argument against veganism is that the New World Order is pushing veganism to make us unhealthy. This is sometimes also stated as the shadow government wants us to be weak. Therefore, they're pushing veganism so that we're all weak and that they can take over and they can control us and that kind of stuff, which is just so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. You can just debunk this by pointing to vegan athletes, I suppose. Yeah, vegan athletes, vegan strongmen, those kind of people, and say that this is not true. People will sometimes say that this is the doing of the Illuminati and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So we're gonna put this. This is just something. This is just a conspiracy theory, F tier, for sure. Okay, the next one. So these are sort of religious arguments, the ones coming up, and there are a few more after that. A really interesting one to end with later on. Do you know what this one is, the last one? Tell me if you know what this one is, this last one. And we'll end with that. We're coming up on the end. There are not many left now. We're done with 60. We're done with 60 arguments. We have 15 more to go. Okay, so the next one is a religious one, and this applies to all religions. People say that God made animals for us to eat. So, to which I ask the question. If you're like, okay, here's how to debunk this. If there was a sort of if there was a God who created everyone, right? Who created animals, who created human beings, who created plants, right? And he wanted human beings to eat animals. Why did he create animals with the ability to feel pain? If he wanted us to eat animals, wouldn't he create animals without the ability to feel pain? Wouldn't that be much more in line with creating beings that are meant to be eaten, right? If there is a God and he created such beings, those beings exist. Those beings are known as plants, right? So eat plants. That's what your God, your loving God, would want you to do, right? So yeah. This is a religious argument, so I'm tempted to put all of these in the F tier, but let's not do that. We're gonna put this in the D tier because religion can be a sensitive topic. Yep, let's put that there. The next argument: Jesus wasn't vegan. Jesus ate fish and that kind of stuff. So Jesus, how long ago did he live? Jesus lived 2,000 years ago, right? He lived 2,022 years ago. That's when Jesus was claimed to be born, claimed to have been born. And yeah. So why would you? See, the thing about Jesus is that he did not have access to supermarkets. Jesus did not have access to supermarkets. You do. Jesus lived in a time where people, if Jesus was God, that is, where people did not have access to supermarkets, so he could not make people live vegan, right? He could not ask people to be vegan at that time. But now, people do have access to supermarkets. So now, if you believe in Jesus, you should be vegan, right? Jesus was the Prince of Peace, wasn't he? So what's up with the Prince of Peace and killing animals, worshipping the Prince of Peace and then killing animals? Doesn't really make that much sense now, does it? Now, also think of this. Let's say you're in a dark room. Let's say you're in a room. There is Jesus, there is a chicken, and there is Satan, right? The lights go off, you can't see anything, and then the lights come on, and you see the chicken is dead because someone, either Jesus or Satan, chopped off the chicken's head. Who do you think it was? Was it Satan or was it Jesus? If you know that the answer is Satan, so you know that Jesus wouldn't do it. So I know that Christians like to say, what would Jesus do? So do what Jesus would do and don't kill the chicken. Don't kill any animals. So we're gonna put this in the E tier, I think. So here's how it's looking so far. Okay, the next argument is about related to Hinduism, right? It's related to Hinduism. Krishna drank milk. Krishna is a Hindu deity, and Krishna drank milk, so it's okay for us to drink milk. Okay, so there's a clip from someone called Urban Animal Activist, who's a great Indian activist, and he responded to this quite brilliantly, so I'm going to quote him. So what he did was he pointed out that Krishna is Krishna, right? Krishna is God, we are humans. So Krishna also lifted a mountain, according to Hindu mythology. Krishna also lifted a mountain on his fingers, and so he did that. And Krishna also used to take away the clothes of women when they were swimming. But imagine using that as a justification to do it today, because Krishna did it, therefore I'm going to do it too. That would be so ridiculous, right? That would be so ridiculous. So Krishna is Krishna, and according to Hindu mythology, Krishna is like all of the universe. All of the universe is contained within Krishna, right? According to Hindu mythology. So if you believe that stuff, you believe this stuff, okay? So everything within the universe is within Krishna, right? The universe is inside Krishna. So the cow that Krishna drinks from is actually, according to Hindu mythology, part of himself, okay? That is not true about you. That is not true about the person watching this video, right? Therefore, you cannot use that as a justification to drink milk, because the cow is not part of you. Okay, so yeah. You do need to know a few things to be able to answer this, and most people don't know that Krishna is the universe himself, that argument. So I'm going to put this in the D tier or the C tier. Where does this go, D tier or C tier? I think this goes in the D tier. But if you think it goes in the C tier, let me know in the comments section. By the way, if you're enjoying the stream, please let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying the stream, please consider supporting the stream using the super chat feature and the link in the stream pinned comment. That really is how I'm able to do these streams, these live streams. So yeah, please do that. Or if you want to support me on a regular basis, you can also support me via joining my Patreon team. The link is in the description of this video. Thank you. Anyway, let's continue. So the next argument is that again related to Hinduism. In Hinduism, Hindus say that cows are their mothers. Therefore, they can drink the milk of cows. But the thing is, first thing to note there is that cows are not your mothers, regardless of what you believe. And this can be said of all the religious arguments that I have covered and am going to cover. Like, look, you can believe what you want to believe, but you cannot use your religion as an excuse to harm others. But yeah, so the cow, you can believe the cow is your mother, but you cannot use that as a justification to harm her. But even if, let's say, the cow is your mother, let's say Hinduism is true, then would you want to answer this, would you want your mother to go through what a cow goes through on a dairy farm? Would you want her to be forcefully impregnated? Would you want her to be separated from all her babies? Would you want her, for example, to be separated from all her babies, for her to experience all of this over and over again until she is dead, right? You wouldn't want this for your mother. So if the cow really is your mother, why would you want this for her? I'm going to put this in the E tier. Okay, the next question. The next argument is the Quran gives us specific instructions on how to kill animals. This is related to Islam, of course. Yep. But the Quran giving instructions on how to kill animals, that is in the context of a time when people used to kill animals like in very even worse ways, let's say, than killing in the sort of halal way. So the Quran gives you specific instructions on how to kill, because at that time, right, animals were being killed in even worse ways. Like people used to chop off the legs first or the tails first and that kind of stuff. So people did that. So this is like a better way of killing animals than cutting off their legs first or cutting off their necks first. But it's not something that you have to do, right? So yeah, it's better than other worse things, but it's not better than not killing animals, is the point that I'm trying to make. Gonna put this in the D tier or the E tier. Where does this go? D tier. I think this one goes in the C tier and this one goes in the D tier. Yeah. Okay. Killing animals. This one is about halal killing. And killing animals in a halal way is quick, the way in which the Quran instructs you or the Hadiths instruct you. And yeah. But the thing is, it's not. First of all, it's not. Like, apparently, the argument runs something like this. The argument runs that killing animals in a halal way is good because the animals die a quick and painless death, but they don't really. And, like, for example, the way to kill animals in a halal way is to keep them completely conscious and slit their throat, and the blood runs out while they're completely conscious. That is not a quick way to die, and that is not a pleasant way to die. Like, would you want, for example, would you want your companion animals to ever go through that ever again? No, the thing is, you wouldn't, right? So that's not a humane. So this is the Muslim version of humane slaughter, and it's not acceptable. I'm gonna put this in the E tier, because you do have to know what halal is in order to be able to debunk this. Second, next argument. The holy festival of Eid requires animal sacrifice. It doesn't. It requires sacrifice, and you can, at that time, again, the Quran was written in the context of a very old time. And you can do that. And that was considered a form of sacrifice at that point. But you can have animal sacrifice, but that's not necessary. So that is not a requirement of Eid to sacrifice animals and that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is just not true. Again, you have to know certain things in order to be able to debunk this. So E tier. This basically, sacrificing animals is not a necessity of Eid, is what I'm trying to say. Next, the Buddha consumed animal products. Well, again, this is again very similar to the Jesus argument and the caveman argument and the ancestors argument, is that the Buddha lived a really, really long time ago. So he didn't have the options that are available to you now, right? The Buddha was indeed a real person. Gautam Buddha or Siddhartha Gautama was indeed a real person. But again, he did not have the access to the resources that you have now. You can't base your actions on what he did, but you can base your actions on the rationally sane things that he taught. So he taught the things like practice of ahimsa, right? So like not harming others, right? Non-violence. So you can apply that, and when you apply that consistently, you ultimately end up to the conclusion that veganism is the way to live. We're gonna put this in the F tier because it's sort of an argument for veganism by referencing the Buddha. So yeah. The next argument against veganism, it was the I can't refuse any food offerings, that kind of stuff, but we already addressed that one here, right, earlier, because someone asked that in a question in a form of a donation. So we got to that early. Again, if you want that too, and we read out his name, if you want your name read out too, please use the link in the pinned comment. Yeah. Anyway, so the next argument against veganism is one deeply respects, like they deeply respect the animals whom they kill, right? They deeply respect them. That is just not true. I'm gonna say that's not true. You can't deeply respect someone if you're going to kill them unnecessarily. Like imagine killing someone and saying that they deeply respect them. That's just not true. That is just not the definition of what it means to be respectful, to kill someone. If you respect them, leave them alone. If you respect their bodily autonomy, let them have control over their body, right? So yeah. F tier. Next argument. I eat what I feel is right. I listen to my body. No. Look, your body can tell you maybe about nutrition, right? Your body can tell you maybe about intuitive eating, as it is called. Maybe can inform you about the nutrition your body needs, but it cannot inform you about the ethics of what you are eating. So that is not an argument on ethical argument. Your body may tell you that you need meat, but you don't need meat. You need protein. You don't need milk. You need calcium, right? So your body doesn't know where these things are, where these nutrients are. What your body knows is that they need the nutrients, right? So listen to the experts and yeah, do that. Gonna put this in the F tier. Okay, the next argument is that it's a journey. Veganism is a journey, and people just need get there in their own pace. Well, this is not really an argument against being vegan, but people just kind of use it as one. Like why are you not vegan? Because it's a journey. They say they're going towards veganism, but they're really not. Okay, so the problem with this is, like, apply it in a human context again. Apply it in a human context and see what happens. Yeah. Imagine someone saying that they not raping is a journey and they need to get there on their own sort of pace and that kind of stuff. How ridiculous would that be? So yeah, that makes no sense at all. I'm gonna put that in the F tier. So most of these arguments, as you can see, are in the F tier. Okay, we're finally ending up. We're close to the end. There are 4 arguments remaining. We got to 71 arguments. Damn, that's a lot of arguments. The next one about vitamins. This is about vitamin B12. Where are you going to get vitamin B12? Because plants don't have B12, right? Plants don't have B12. So where are you going to get that? Well, you can get them through supplements. And people say, well, it's not natural though. It's not natural though. Well, you are watching this video on a laptop or a smartphone or a tablet. Is that natural? It's not. So what's your problem with eating a few pills? That shouldn't be a problem. And besides, anyway, the animals whom you're eating, they get their B12 not because their body produces it. It's because they get it from supplements fed to them. So instead of feeding the supplements to the animals, then kill the animals, to then eat the animals, you could just directly eat the supplements, right? So yeah, you do have to know a few things to be able to answer this. So see it here. You can't just say that B12 you get it in plants and that kind of stuff. Okay, final three. Let's go. So the C tier argument is what if you're so the last 3 arguments are these. What if you're stuck on a deserted island? You would eat an animal then, so veganism is, you'd be in survival mode, you would not be vegan, so why be vegan now? Well, the response here is clear. You're not on a deserted island right now, right? You're not on a deserted island right now. So what's, like, in that scenario, it would be a situation of necessity, right? So you'd have to eat the animals, maybe. But now it's not a situation of necessity. For example, if you're stuck on a deserted island and you had to choose between eating an old person and a young person, maybe you wouldn't eat either. But if someone eats the old person in that situation, it doesn't mean, because they have to survive and the old person has lived their life and that kind of stuff, that wouldn't justify them eating old people in this society, society of abundance. And it certainly wouldn't justify people factory farming old people, putting them into gas chambers and eating them up, right? Certainly wouldn't. So yeah, that's not a good justification. It's the classic deserted island. The final 2 arguments. This one is Hitler was vegetarian though, right? First of all, that is not true. And second of all, okay, first let's get to the first point. That is not true. Hitler was not a vegetarian. Hitler was a meat eater. And the point that he was a vegetarian is literally Nazi propaganda. Literally, right? So Nazi propaganda had Hitler wanted Hitler to look like someone who was really popular at the time. Or it was Mahatma Gandhi, right? The anti-colonialist hero, sort of, or at least he's perceived as one. So it was Nazi propaganda to make Hitler look like him. And by saying that Hitler was vegetarian, you're literally propagating Nazi propaganda. So don't do that. And the second point to make there is that even if he was vegetarian, he was still non-vegan. So that is not an argument against veganism. We're going to put this in the F tier, right? Because it is literally a logical fallacy. It's called the reductio ad Hitlerium. Oh, sorry. It's called, it's a form of the guilt by association fallacy. Right? It's a form of the guilt by association fallacy. Because Hitler did this, you're also doing this, therefore what you're doing is evil. It's like saying Hitler drank water, you drink water, therefore what you're doing is therefore drinking water is immoral. It just makes no sense. Okay, we're down to the final argument. The final argument is you need bloodlust, and meat gives you bloodlust. Therefore, when China or Russia invade the United States, people need bloodlust to be able to fight them off. And this I'm gonna put in the S tier. And this, I'm not making this up. If you don't know about this, this is an argument that Earthling Ed faced. It's an argument that Earthling Ed faced at Texas University. So this is how it finally looks. In case you don't believe me in saying that this is a real argument that people make, I'm gonna show the video to you. Okay, we're going to watch that video together, and then we're going to end the stream. And by the way, if you have some questions, drop them in the chat. And if you really want your question answered, then you should use the super chat feature or the link in the pinned comment. So this is how it looks right now. These are the S tier arguments, the A tier, the B tier, the C tier, the D tier. You'll notice that the number goes up as we go down, because most of these are rather easy to debunk, and there are only a few arguments that are like up there. Okay, so we're going to download this, save or download. We're going to say anti-vegan arguments and a tier list of every argument against veganism by Soytheist. So that ends the okay. So that ends the list, but we're also going to watch the bloodlust Tho argument, because that is one of the S tier arguments. So we're going to watch that. We're going to watch the S tier argument against veganism. Earthling Ed, bloodlust Tho. Okay, we've done generating the image. Okay, so here's the image downloaded, and we're now going to watch the Earthling Ed, the bloodlust Tho argument. Let's first have a look at the So this is the one. This is the one. So there you go. This is every anti-vegan argument ever ranked. Anyway, Let's watch the bloodlust Tho argument.
If I want a warrior, I'm going to feed them red meat. I want them to have the bloodlust necessary to kill someone. And that comes from hunting and eating red meat.
Do you need that bloodlust?
Yes.
So what do you need that bloodlust for? Maybe I'm a bit scared of you now.
No, engineering's competitive.
So there you go, folks. That is the bloodlust argument. And yeah, so I'm not making that up, right? And we're gonna make it. Maybe we can scroll a little bit later to make sure what the whole argument is.
Bloodlust.
Yes.
So what do you need that bloodlust for? Maybe I'm a bit scared of you now.
No, engineering, I choose to eat meat. I'm choosing to harness. I'm choosing to become a monster and then control that monster to become as productive in society as I can be.
It just feels a little bit insincere because, we kind of established before that one of your fears about people harming animals gratuitously was that it would create more kind of negative traits in those humans. Outside of the consideration that non-human animals, deserve, you were fearful. And so it seems like you've all out
The nuance argument, because
Yeah, so this argument is, again, I'm not making this up. This is an argument that someone actually made to Earthling Ed. And this is just so silly. First of all, this is just not going to happen. Again, you need to just look at all the vegan athletes, all the vegan sort of athletes and strongmen to realize that you don't indeed need animal products to be strong or to be able to, in order to fight off an invasion. And secondly, I don't think that's happening, right? So the Prime Minister or the President of China recently said, for example, a hilarious quote that they wouldn't do anything in order to stop the United States from deteriorating in itself. So that was a hilarious comment, I thought. So yeah, that's not happening. And yeah, anyway, if it happens, eating meat is not what's going to save you. So anyway, folks, this was a nice live stream. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Good night.